Okay, now we're recording. Okay, so here we are on June 14th, 2026. We've got the Gemini new supermoon. So rather than a super full moon, it's a super new moon. So that would, we talked about full moons are always releasings and stuff like that, or challenging things usually a lot of times. Well, this moon is a new moon, but it's a super moon, so it's blowing everything up. Supposedly this is the closest moon to the United States this year. So that will be, but that's why this one's a really big deal. And Gemini is communications, and a lot of people just think communications, like telephone stuff, social media types things, TV, radio, all those kinds of the basic communications. But when you go down to the core level, it's also communication one-on-one with yourself. It's one-on-one with Spirit, Mother, Father, God, however you look at that, the whole Elohim, the whole esoteric world, the psychic world. And really, it's any type of communication in all types of forms. And so when you really open it up to that, frame of reference, then you're like, okay, wow, that's that really, allows us to come into a lot of change, especially since it is the biggest moon. And because it's closest to the Earth, it's going to be very impactful because the moon is always ruling our emotional body. So, it really does, I think, pretend to make a lot of changes. And there's a lot of aspects either to this moon, or there's a lot of other planets that are aspecting each other, creating a lot of the change. And I've talked about, all these months earlier, that these changes are going all the way through the summer, actually all the way through 2026. But definitely, talked about June and July, and all the astrologers are talking about it, that, it's just a lot of change and things happening right now. So, gotta get some water. And of course, all these things, affect each of us individually in different ways, depending on how much work we've done internally with our own souls, family dynamics, business dynamics, kids, and what have you. Let me pull up. Just to give a little overview of some of the things, like within the last week and this week. One of the big things that happened was Jupiter meeting Venus, or Venus coming up to meet Jupiter since she moves faster in Cancer. So it's realigning, all the heart stuff that we do, the way we nurture ourselves, connections, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of stuff is happening in Cancer. And I think that's, while we're feeling it on a visceral level, if we're open to it. And then, of course, we're setting up right now the Mercury Retrograde, which happens June the 29th to July 23rd. But we're in the shadow starting as of the 12th, so just 2 days ago. So from this point, it marks territory we're going to have to come back over all the way through July and into August, just right before the eclipses kick in. So, that's just a lot. The other thing that's happening is, Chiron is at that last degree, 29 degrees of Aries. So we've been dealing with, ever since 2018, the wounding of the I am presence. So that's personal wounding. It's the wounding of the soul. It's core individuation wounding. It's wounding with regards to who you are in respect to as an aspect of God. It's it's been a really deep journey, I think. It can be, depending on where your perspective is. But that's finishing up, and I think it's the 19th that it finally switches out. But I mean, the 10th, we also had Mercury squaring Saturn, which was, this Gemini passage. Of course, Mercury rules Gemini, so it's all communication stuff. But squaring Saturn is like, it's really changing the structure of how we communicate. A lot of, I think, challenges with communication, and of course, Saturn is structure. So I think, with squares, it brings, usually workable things, but not always easy. The energy doesn't always flow. And then, we also had Uranus squaring the nodes of fate, and of course, the nodes are tied to the our emotional body, with individual and collective, and the nodes are always going backwards. So the North Node, where we're going in the world, how we see the world, creating fated events. Getting a square from Uranus is shocking. Usually shifts that we're not always looking for, but that put us where we need to go. So those are usually a big deal. And that happened, I think, actually on the 12th, a couple days ago. Actually, about when Mercury went into the retrograde shadow. So, what else was there? Then yesterday, Venus squared Chiron. So that was an exact thing. And, Chiron at that end of Aries, and Venus, of course, here at the end of Cancer before going into Leo. But Venus is how we value and what we do. Of course, then it kind of makes you work with the wound of the I am presence. So it really, the dynamic, I think, it really takes you into the core of who you are. From the wound, and there's so many, I think, people that are living their life only from the core of their wound. They don't really, come across from a place of always happiness. That they come from a place of challenging and limitation and all these other things. It's just like, it's always work sometimes. The other thing, then of course Venus goes into Leo. It's in Leo now, and that's going to be there till July the 8th for the bulk of the Mercury retrograde time period. So, I mean, it'll be, making semi-sextile aspects, which are just adjustment aspects, really, as far as who we are and stuff. But this moon, it's actually, it'll be direct or exact tonight at 9:54 this evening, as we're in the meditation call, assuming we're still in meditation, which I imagine we probably will be. We usually are. So, I mean, that'll be interesting. So, becoming exact literally as we're sitting in our own I am presence and doing healing work. And so that'll be kind of nice. But, I mean, the fact that this moon is really in Gemini is creating a lot of new beginnings as far as how I think we see the world, how we communicate with the world. But again, I mean, this can go really core. It's like, how do you communicate with yourselves? And of course, we do this every meditation anyway. When I take us on this journey and go in, I mean, Spirit just leads me in on the atomic and subatomic levels. We go in on the cellular level. We go in on the, mitochondrial, to really kind of go into our core and, ask for releases in ways that most people don't know how to either pray or ask or, go into that type of level of awareness. We're just not trained to do that. So anyway, I mean, the fact that, doing all of that, I think is a big deal. If you look in the mundane world, all of this stuff with AI, that's all communication. With Uranus wearing the nodes toward the north where we're going. I mean, shocking, revelations. I mean, AI is just, everything is happening so fast. I don't necessarily, I see the good with it, but I also see the bad. I mean, it is, I think that's one of the most dichotomous things that we're experiencing as humans right now is this whole artificial intelligence thing. Computers are just exponentially growing. They're exponentially invading our spaces. They're invading our life force. They're invading the way we live life, the way we manufacture life, the way we, I mean, everything on every level. And that's, I don't know. Again, some things I can see the good, but a lot of things I'm like, I really don't like that at all. So, I don't know. I guess, the jury's still out on what that's going to look like. But, of course, Hollywood has to tell you what they're doing all the time through the movies and TV and everything else. And, I mean, that goes all the way back to my teenage years, when they're putting Blade Runner and what's the Sylvester Stallone and what's her face, Terminator, and all those types of movies about when computers take over our future. Well, here we are. Nothing can go wrong here, can it? Yeah, well, I don't know. So I guess it just depends on the guardrails. Can people put guardrails on it to keep that from going spinning out? And I hope there's enough people in place that have enough control over that. We'll see how that works. So that's everything up till now. And starting tomorrow, Venus is really going to start shifting a lot of things in good ways. Tomorrow we have a Venus sextile with Uranus. That's going to bring unexpected opportunities, sextiling. It's flowing energy, but you have to work with it. It doesn't just drop in your lap. But, you can really have a lot of things that can open up. The next day, Venus is trining Neptune. So, that's really going into, more spiritual awareness, potentially, love life can be shifts. It really is that's good flowing energy from both Uranus and Neptune for Venus. But then on the 17th, Venus is opposing Pluto. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. Oppositions just mean that it's the opposite point of when Venus comes into connection with something. But it creates the opposite effect. It's a push and pull type relationship. So, it can just take you much deeper into any Venusian themes. The way you value things, the way you love things, just that whole type of dynamic. And because you've got, Venus, with Uranus and Pluto and Neptune all at the same time within those 3 degrees, that, let's just say it's deeply transformative values and love potentials. Let's just call it that. I guess. Let me see. Okay, I just pulled those from some notes. Let me pull the actual chart. So when I was looking at all these things last night, as far as the actual placements of everything, there's the trines. Oh, but I thought I had that one down. I guess I forgot to pull that one down. No, that's because I wasn't in that. Okay, I looked in the wrong thing. Gemini. I was looking back in Taurus. Yeah, so Gemini, it's basically at 24 degrees Gemini. And what's interesting, and I don't think I've read this in any of the charts with astrologers necessarily. Fixed star-wise, this new moon is sitting on a star called Ganesha at 2348, which is basically just right there with the moon. And Ganesha has always been tied to like new beginnings, blessings. If you've ever heard about Lord Ganesha with the Buddhist world and Eastern philosophies and religious, belief systems and things, it's supposed to be very prosperous. And then the Polaris star, which is the North Star, Polaris is at 28 and 54. It's only, within, maybe 3 or 4 degrees, which is pretty close. And of course, Betelgeuse, people talk about that one too a lot. But the thing for me that's interesting is all of my personal progressed planets are sitting right here at this degree. So I don't know what that's going to mean for me personally, but my progressed Venus is at 22, progressed Sun is at 23, 50, almost 24 degrees exactly with this moon, and the Sun is coming to meet my progressed Sun. And then my progressed Mars is at 25. And not to be left out, progressed Mercury is at 29 degrees of Gemini, all at the end. So all of my personal planets are right here in this last, it's called a decan, which is the last 10 degrees of a sign. And this moon is just lighting them all up. So I don't feel any different. I wish I could say that there's some big shift that's come. The Einstein asteroid has gone across all of them and meeting up with the moon actually at the end of today, beginning of tomorrow. So maybe Einstein's going to bring a lot of big theory shifts and changes. I don't know. The other thing, the moon and sun just went across the Priapus movement, which I've talked about. That's the opposite of the Lilith. It's the moon's perigee, and that's also why, because it's at the moon's perigee. That's why this is a super new moon, because it's closest to the perigee, which is closest to the Earth, which is Priapus. Lilith is in the apogee, the farthest point of the Earth. But Priapus represents the divine masculine, in my humble opinion, if you use it in the highest purpose. If not, Priapus, the name itself, just basically is, a name for the phallic symbol, the penis, whatever you want to call it. And that's why it's always called the more male energies. But, the fact that is closer to the Earth, I find interesting, and the fact that Lilith, which is the feminine energy, is furthest away from the Earth. But she's really out in the cosmos, and I think that's why, that they named them that way. And but the point is, the fact that we're here with this, what I would call the divine masculine energy, in its highest manifestation, the sun is working with that in Gemini. Now, if you have someone that's, spreading their male symbolism around in the not so great ways, when you look at, the news and outer world, you have that too. And of course, we live in duality, and some people are playing out the worst possible, things in the world of form. Now, this moon, before it came into all this, it just went across Uranus and Sedna and Ceres and the Lilith asteroid, just, from the 13th to the 14th. So the moon was infused with all that energy before becoming a new moon with the sun. And so, it's got that Uranian, I think, feel to it. As far as workable energy, there's not a lot as far as the aspect of trines. It's trining the fixed star Spica and Arcturus. Jude always used to say she was Arcturian from Arcturus. And some of the spiritual people always talk about the Arcturians being, very wise people. And that's exactly at 24 degrees of Libra. So it's an exact trine. So who knows? Maybe we're going to have Arcturian individuals come forth with this sun, and we'll have more disclosure. I don't know if y'all seen the meme going around Facebook. They've been putting Donald Trump with some of these. It was two figures that have the long white hair and these red robes. They're calling them the Pleiadians, as opposed to the Arcturians. But the Pleiades is actually at the beginning of Gemini, not at the end of Gemini. But I mean, they're really pushing all these, themes around disclosure again, and who knows? It's hard to know what's going to happen with any of it anymore. As far as Aquarius, though, trining energy, Cheroklo, which is the wife of Chiron, another centaur, but it's more like the divine feminine energy of healing energy, is at 26 of Aquarius. That's only a couple degrees away, so that's working with this exactly. The Nicola asteroid is exactly at 24 Aquarius, so it's an exact trine to the sun. So it makes you wonder if like Nikola Tesla, like Tesla energy or something, could be trining and working with the fact that Elon Musk has just now gone to be the biggest IPO, company, sales of stock into trillions of dollars. I mean, that's ever happened. Who knows? I can make a case for that, I think. The other thing, that is still operable here with this energy that I've talked about the last couple of weeks too. Uranus is the beginning of Gemini, and Pluto is still at 5 Aquarius. And so those are within 2 degrees of each other. The Lilith asteroid is there, series of nurturing, and everything else is there. And they were with the moon when they trined Pluto earlier today. So Pluto already activated the moon before it became new within the day. It also came across a trine to Juno retrograde. And I've talked about, Pluto, the transformation, and Juno, which is partnering and marriages and all these things. Juno has been retrograding back toward Pluto. And so I think the fact that the moon trined both of those planets is going to, it's an activation of those planets as Juno goes back. And actually, as we get into July, Pluto would be met back up with Juno retrograde again. So there's going to be a lot of transformational review with regards to relationships. And that's going to be all activated by Cancer because of the Mercury retrograde. I mean, not exactly, because the retrograde will be in the last half of Cancer, and Pluto and Juno are the beginning of Aquarius. But because we're going through, this relationship transformation retrograde in Aquarius with Pluto and Juno, at the same time we're going through a Mercury retrograde in Cancer, which is, reviewing our emotional expression and everything else. I think those two things are going to work together during this time period. Let me see. Yeah, I guess that was the big thing I wanted to hit with those. Now later on, when we have the next moon, I forget exactly when it is, but Mars is going to come into Gemini, and Mars is going to go across Gemini for like the next month, the whole month of July. So whatever's happening now will have action following it, as Mars hits all of these points, going into, actually more into August, when it's going across these points. Because by the 29th, it'll be at 21 degrees. And it will be, going in towards series of nurturing. So Mars and nurturing are going to come together by the time we get to the eclipses on August the 12th. So it's going to be really interesting to see how some of these things play out. Let me see. What else did I want to get on to? The sextiling energy of this moon. There's not really anything in Leo, which is the 60 degree placement away. My natal Jupiter is exactly sextile to it, so maybe this moon is going to really bring something beneficial to me, and it could. We'll have to just see how it plays out. on the other side of the sextile, though, is Aries. Aries and Gemini are sextiling that way. And the exact sextile of that hits Eris in Aries. It's at 25 degrees, but it's basically within a degree. So Eris is all the discord. Chiron is just past all that. I mean, Chiron is only at the end of Aries till the 19th, so we've only got 5 more days of it. But the fact that both those energies are there together with this new moon really is kind of like, to me, releasing the wound in Aries and the I am presence. We're doing the final work of internal wounding, and it's, again, that's a wide sextile, but it's still working with this moon. So I really think that is allowing us to renew ourselves through the I am presence and release that final wounding. So whatever you perceive to be a wound, I think it's time to be gone. The Eris, of discord being an exact sextile to this moon, that would tell me that if there's any place in your emotional world or the way of communication, if there's anything, Eris is, if you're dissatisfied with something or anything else, this is going to give you workable energy to communicate about it. This thing it's sextile my Saturn, the work I come here to do. My Sun is at 28, so it's sextiling my Sun. So there's some really good aspects with all of this, I think. So we'll see how it moves forward. As Venus goes through Leo, though, starting on the 13th yesterday, there's not a lot there that's going to hit. There's only Achilles and Solaris, which are a couple centaurs, and Varuna. But there's no other really transiting things that's going to conjunct or meet with before it leaves on the 9th of July. But Venus, as it goes through, Jupiter will go in on the 29th and start going across everywhere that Venus was. Of course, it moves much slower, but it's going to be a much more dynamic energy for July when Jupiter gets into all that. Those are sextiling energies. Let me see what's next. The squares. So squares are more challenging energies. As I sit here and sniff. Oh, Bobette, that nasal spray. I've been using that. I do think that works pretty good. Thank you. I meant to acknowledge that for you. But yeah. So Gemini squares Virgo and Pisces, but it also, in those squares, it is in opposition to Sagittarius. And this moon being at 24 degrees of Gemini is within a 3-degree opposition to the Galactic Center. The Galactic Center is also being, technically I would say transited if it was a planet, but it's not a planet because of the point of where the oscillating Lilith point is, which is the furthest point from the Earth. And I've talked about oscillating Lilith being in that wild, untamed feminine energy. She's going back and forth all over Sagittarius. And she's just come across the Galactic Center while this moon, is going across an exact opposition to the Galactic Center. It's come in contact with the Black Moon Lilith path. That's not a coincidence. So I think that it's in opposition to the Black Moon Lilith path, while it's actually sitting in Priapus, which is the moon's perigee. And it's another reason that I think that this moon is creating a huge shift in our perception and the way we use the divine feminine energy, which is the Black Moon Lilith oscillation, as well as the Priapus, which is the divine masculine. I mean, both of those polarities are tied into this moon exactly. And with the Galactic Center sitting there, it's getting big galactic downloads. I mean, it's the center of the Milky Way. It is, it's really, I think, streaming in galactic consciousness into this new moon. That's the other reason why I think we're having galactic communication happening, because the moon is in Gemini. So the other part to this is that Lilith path is sitting right on Rasa Hawa, which is the head of the snake in the Ophiuchus star system. The Ophiuchus star system, of course, is the one that's just hidden. They just took it out like it didn't exist, as if. And so, the fact that you've got that, I mean, that talks about a lot of Kundalini awakening potentialities. It depends on where each person is within the soul path. But all of this is an extreme dynamic. So that's the oppositions. Then you also have, Uranus is squaring the nodes. The south node's in Virgo, the north node's in Pisces. And they're coming to the ends of their journeys in Virgo and Pisces before the south node goes into Leo and the north node goes into Aquarius, which will happen not until next month, on the 27th. It's coming in at the first in the 0 degree. It'll basically get to 0 degrees somewhere around the beginning of July, like around July 1st or something. So it's going to be riding that 0 degree node the entire month of July, and that's a whole other topic for another day. They won't be as close to Uranus at that point. Uranus will be at 4, but there'll still be workable energy with the bigger planets. But the fact that you have that square to the nodes happening at the same time as this moon, that's a big deal, because you're working, well, we're all individually and collectively working with our past, but also where we're going in the future. And you can't have one without the other. But there's so much to release from the past, and yet that's being created. Because this is a new moon, it's actually focusing more on what's being created than what's being released. So that's a really good thing. This moon actually happens to be as an exact square to my Uranus. So am I going to have some shocking shifts in my life? Well, as long as they're good. I mean, all change and shifts doesn't have to be bad. So I'm praying that's going to be in the better mode. But and the Gregory asteroid is sitting on Uranus, so who knows? And the John asteroid's coming up right behind it. So I don't know. And Lachesis of Fate's there. Eros is going through Virgo at this particular time. Eros is the higher version of Mars, so it's squaring all of this. It's almost an exact square to the Sun through a lot of the path, but or at least last couple weeks it was. I mean, we'll see how that moves. Pisces is the other square to Gemini. Something I noticed with this. Oh yeah, so that takes us into what I've talked about so many times. In Pisces, we've got Nessus, which is all of the abuse cycles, sexual, mental, emotional abuses. All of it falls into Nessus. That goes retrograde on the 17th, coming up just in 3 days. And it does it, it actually makes it 223 degrees when it does it. So it's within a degree right now of this moon. Tarana-Hiawatha is on 24 degrees, exactly squaring this moon. And Pam Gregory talks a lot about Tarana-Hiawatha. The fact that and Nessus are traveling together, I think are a big deal. And the Pam asteroid, Pamela, is right there with Nessus and Tarana-Hiawatha. It's so funny. But anyway, all that energy is squaring each other, and that also means it's squaring the Black Moon Lilith oscillation. So the Divine Feminine is working with the moon and working with the abuse cycles, I think, to shift, a lot of the way that we perceive things, the way we tolerate things, the way we, are trying to give up things. Let me see, what else was I going to go into? Okay, so we've done the oppositions. Let me see, semi-sextiles. The semi-sextiles of the sun's right next to, so you'd have Taurus on one side, Gemini, and Cancer on the other. So these are really just kind of adjustment aspects, but they do, create movement, and it's actually pretty decently active. Mars is coming up to Black Moon Lilith on the 13th and 14th, and Waldemouth Lilith, which is more like the really hidden part of Lilith. I mean, it can be like the really deep part of the sexual nature that never expresses itself, that won't ever dare come out to play because it's so, on the not so great side. Doesn't always have to be that way, but sometimes it just is. Again, that semi-sextiling. But Algol, fixed star Algol is at 26 and 30, which is just a couple degrees away from this moon. So it's semi-sextile is adjustment attitudes to it. So, Algol could, I think, create shifts for anybody that's having this moon aspected in some way. I mean, we'll see how it plays out in the world of form. But the other thing that's really hitting it too is Jupiter. Jupiter is semi-sextiling it because Jupiter is at 26 degrees on the other side. So, and then you've got that Mercury retrograde, which is at 18 degrees now, but it's going to slowly station going into like that 26th degree, actually 24th and 25th degree, which is the degree of this moon. Again, it's semi-sextiles, but it means that the Mercury retrograde is going to be working as an adjustment to the new moon. So any communication things we've got, Mercury is communication. It's going to be semi-sextiling this moon in Gemini, or this point throughout the whole retrograde. It's going to go back down through there. Psyche is involved in that. Hygeia is more of a healthy kind of, like a specific type of health observation that you would take with yourself. And Psyche is a higher version of Venus. So I think there's a lot of potential for the way it's internal communication with ourselves, I think, on a healing way, because Hygeia and Psyche are there in the middle of the retrograde, and because it's in Cancer, I think that's a big deal. Pollux and Procyon are the Gemini stars. They're technically Gemini, although they fall into Cancer in the tropical zodiac, which is most of what Western astrology looks through. But if you think about it from the sun standpoint, this Mercury retrograde is going over Pollux and Procyon, which are the Gemini twins. So if you look at it from a sidereal zodiac, this Mercury retrograde is in Gemini technically and not Cancer. So, depending on who's doing the interpretation, you can make cases for both. The other thing that's going to be interesting is when we get to the next moon. That moon is on June 29th. It's a full moon in Capricorn, but it means the sun is in Cancer. So the sun is going to come up to this Mercury retrograde, like literally as it's almost about to station, but it won't be until the 12th of July. So the sun creates the moon in the opposite part of the Earth, but that it's the sun. So it's gonna be working with, I think, the Mercury retrograde quite a bit in that way. So we'll just see how it all works out. But the fact that those energies are playing together, Mars is also in Taurus, so it's going to be sextiling workable energy to Cancer and the Mercury retrograde. So I think that we're going to have a lot of, and they're pretty tight conjunctions. I mean, the energy is very close to Mercury in all this. So it's going to be assisting to give action, forward motion, because it's happening before Mercury actually turns retrograde, and it'll be before Mars leaves the sign of Taurus. I know that's a lot of stuff to take in. You're probably wondering, like, okay, how do I make sense of that? Just know that we will have, I think, forward action that's going to be workable with this Mercury stationing to go retrograde before it actually goes retrograde. And then the action will move into Gemini as far as Mars, but it will continue to work with this Mercury until it goes retrograde. So for the next month, or for the rest of this month, I think we'll actually have decent moving energy as far as action before we get to the next moon cycle. So the other aspects that are sometimes challenging to work with are the quincunxes. Those are the fingers of God. Now, what I did look, and I was kind of surprised to see that there was not a lot of direct quincunxing energy happening with that, which is good, because it means you don't have a lot of, I think, fated shifts with regards to this moon. Not in traditional ways, because there's no planets in Capricorn, which is quincunx in Gemini, and there's no, well, the Narcissus Centaur is actually going retrograde in Scorpio, so that is actually creating a quincunx to this moon within 2 degrees. So that could be challenging energy for anyone playing out narcissistic tendencies and energies at the end of Scorpio. It just happens to go over my natal and progress Neptune, so I don't know what that's going to mean for me. I don't think I'm playing anything narcissistic. The other thing that's interesting with that is the Tesla asteroid. The Tesla asteroid just re-entered Scorpio on the 10th, which is around the day, we had the Tesla, Nikola, was taking SpaceX into the IPO. Tesla doesn't really necessarily have anything directly with SpaceX, except for the fact that they're tied together with its creator. I don't know how much energy is shared, but the fact that Tesla went back into Scorpio at 29 degrees when all this was happening, it's going to be interesting to see if that's activated at all. And it's coming up, it's retrograding back toward this particular new moon. So I don't know. We'll see if that affects anything with Elon Musk and SpaceX, or even the Tesla car brand, because it's retrograde. Maybe it's going to have some issues in Scorpio. Scorpio's secrets, its hidden things, and it's coming up on the Narcissus retrograded Centaur. So it could have some narcissistic cars. I don't know. I don't know how that'll work. Anyway, so then we get, let me see, Scorpio and Capricorn. Let me go to those real quick to see. So because Scorpio, I talked about that. Yeah, so Narcissus and Tesla at the end of Scorpio is quincunxing this moon, so it's finger of God moment. Ooh, so it may. But interestingly, on the other side, then, when you look at Aries, it's sextiling Gemini. So it's sextiling the Sun. So it's Chiron of wounding in Eris, working with the Sun and Moon, but they're creating quincunxes or finger god moments with Narcissus, Centaur, and Scorpio. So you may have like some sort of, I think, dynamic happening with that. Again, we'll just have to see what happens. In Capricorn, there's nothing really in Capricorn that's the finger pressure point of this moon, and there's nothing really in Leo that's sextiling it. So there's not really much happening there. So, just from an energetic standpoint, I think those are the biggest things as far as the moon is concerned, with what's happening or being activated. Overall, I do think that we are in a pretty good place of the other aspects happening just in the sky, period. When you look at all of the planets that are in Aries, trining-wise, when Venus goes into Leo on the 13th, I'm sorry, that was yesterday, Venus is going to be trining our entire existence in Aries all the way through the 9th of July when it goes out. So it's going to make aspects to Neptune, to Manway, to Salacia, Saturn, Vesta, Pallas Athena, Eris. It will not aspect Chiron because Chiron goes out on the 19th. But so Venus is going to be very workable with our I am presence for this next few weeks. The other thing that's happening, because of Sagittarius being in the other, Grand Fire Trine, oscillating Lilith is going back and forth. So again, that represents the divine feminine, and it's aspecting most of Aries in its back and forth movement in this next time period. So it's going to be working with Aries in all of those ways from now. It started on the 11th and all the way through the 1st of July. And it will work, some more next month too. Something that's going to be good. The other thing is the fact that Eris being at 25 of Aries, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but it really is trining the Galactic Center. And so, within 2 degrees, less than 2 degrees. So, wherever we've got discord, things being brought to forth with our I am presence, it's getting a hit of cosmic download, because it's in an exact open, flow with the Milky Way, the center of our world and our galaxy. And every time that oscillating Lilith goes over it, either retrograde or back and forth, that's the divine feminine energy accessing the galactic center while it's trining Eris. So I think that that's when we have a lot of forward-moving, feeling, cosmic, individuals that are speaking in higher language, higher frequency, when they're articulating things out. And a lot of people can't hear it, and they don't want to understand it or know it, but those energies are really working together. So that's a really good thing. And Venus, as it goes across later in this month, is going to be pretty close. It's going to go through that galactic, or through the oscillating Lilith energy. So it's going to be activated with the divine feminine pretty much in around like the 25th through the 28th, 29th energy. It's going to be, Venus is going to be overlaid, sextiling it. So I do think that that's going to change a lot of the way that it's going to soften. I think it's going to soften the approaches. The other thing, that's in Sagittarius is the great attractor at the middle And that oscillating Lilith is going right across the great attractor as well as Galactic Center all the time. So it's two cosmic download places that we get. And again, it does it in Ophiuchus, even though it's Sagittarius, it's overlaying all the Ophiuchus star system. So the fact that star system has been hidden from us as far as anything we articulate and we understand, I think it's still very pertinent in what we're doing. Let me see. As far as trining energies, I think I went through all the trines. Yeah, in Gemini. Taurus and Virgo and Capricorn energies. Let's see here. Once Chiron goes into Taurus on the 19th, it will come into immediate trining energy with the South Node in Virgo. And Virgo, Taurus, the South Node is attempting to come into the 0 degree, and when it does, probably around the 1st of July into June, it's going to be more exactly trining Chiron. So Chiron is going to work with that. And of course, it's the 0 degrees, so it's beginning, movement of stuff. It's also the Regulus royal star. It's at the beginning of Virgo. And Venus is going to go into Virgo on the 9th, meeting up with Chiron and the South Node. That's going to be a really powerful configuration, because we're going to have the healing energy meeting with Venus at the beginning of Virgo with the South Node. So it's going to take our past life trajectory, our experiences, individual and collectively, and it's going to bring some healing focus, I think, to it. And not to be left out, then oscillating Lilith in Capricorn, when it goes into that part, will also be working with those energies during part of that too. So I think there's going to be a lot of good flowing energy coming later in the last few weeks with Gemini and Virgo and Capricorn. Let me see. Not to be left out, the trining energy between Cancer and Scorpio and Pisces. Jupiter, we've talked about, is leaving. It's going to leave Cancer at the end of this month as it goes into Mercury Retrograde. That Jupiter has been blowing up on top of last week anyway, but in a good way. It's been trining Nessus and Terra and Hiawatha in Pisces. So all the abuse patterns have been blown up by Jupiter. Venus met that when it met Jupiter recently. It was also trining the Narcissus Centaur. So I think I've mentioned these things before. Venus will go out, so it won't be aspecting anymore. Jupiter will finally go out of it. But what is then coming into workability is this Mercury retrograde. Again, it's trining energy, but it's going to go across the Narcissus Centaur and Scorpio. So that's any narcissistic hidden tendencies, that scorpionic, sexual, all that kind of stuff. Nessus in Pisces, again, that's a lot of hidden themes, can be religious abuses, all those kinds of. It's all trining energy. And the fact you've got this Mercury retrograde coming in, trining all of that, is going to, I think, bring out more and more of those things as it affects home and, more emotional expression. So there could be a lot of emotional healing. There could be emotional shifting. The secretive stuff in Scorpio may be brought out. Again, it's not challenging energies, but it's definitely a flowing energy, trining energy. It's going to be workable. And so I think that's going to be a good thing. So we'll have to see how those things play out. over, through that whole retrograde time period. The other thing to that, like I mentioned, we're going to have that full moon in Capricorn in 2 weeks on the 29th. That will also be in the sign of Cancer. Then there will be a new moon in Cancer on July the 14th, and it's literally going to be right next to the Mercury retrograde. And Mercury does not station direct until like the 23rd of July. So this is a very, it's like a 2-month long process of this Mercury retrograde in Cancer. And it's going to be working with Nessus and Tyron Hiawatha in Pisces, and the Narcissus Centaur and Clotho of Fate actually comes to meet in with it in Scorpio. So I do think there's just going to be a huge peeling away of secretive, narcissistic behaviors, abuses with this retrograde. It's going to access every one of them. And then the Priapus moon perigee point is going to, across the whole month of July, going into August, when we go into those eclipses, is going to then start trining the first parts of Scorpio and Pisces. But it's going to take us into that eclipse window, which will be very active. I'm not going to go into that. That's too far away. Just suffice it to say, I've said 2026 was going to be a big year, and a lot of things were going to shift and change, and they are. So I think that's pretty much the bulk of what I wanted to hit on. There's so many things that I see when I pull up these charts with these spreadsheets. I hope I've done it justice, and I hope, again, do check with all the professional astrologers and everything I've sent with the emails, because they can certainly articulate things better than I have. Yeah. So, that takes us to about almost a quarter afternoon almost. So, well, I guess we'll just go ahead and go into meditation work. I don't think there's anything else out of the ordinary that I wanted to bring about or bring attention to with regards to any of this. I do think, we're in a place where, this energy is going to help us create a lot of things we need, because it is in Gemini. Again, it's all communication based. But where a lot of the other astrologers are only going to talk about, communication from the traditional sense, communication with each other, phones and, automobiles and all the things that Gemini, usually gets talked about, especially with Mercury retrograde and things. Because the retrograde is in Cancer, and because this moon is in Gemini, I think it speaks more to the personal, internal dialogues and communications that we're having with ourselves, and also with spirit. And because it's in opposition to the Galactic Center, that's cosmic downloads and discussions. To me, that speaks much more powerfully than, what some of the other mundane astrology is articulating. It goes on a much deeper level. And some people, if they're traditionally trained, with the astrology in certain ways, that's what they're going to articulate. People can only go with what they know, and if they've never been taken into something else, then they don't know to articulate that, I guess, as it were. So, anyway, okay. Well, I've got I had to adjust all my lighting and get myself ready to sit and go into stillness. And so if you haven't already reached your comfortable either lazy chair recliner or your bed or couch or wherever you are, imagine everybody's already been there. It's kind of like Jude always used to say. She would always say she was working on us before the moon sessions. So she wanted to know who was coming in and doing. Or actually, no, that was actually more of the workshops. The moons, she was just radiating from that moment. But I've said this too. I mean, our souls are already so connected. We know when we're going to be here, either consciously or unconsciously. So the collective work that we do is already, it's kind of like an automatic process. We've already made a decision that we're going to be in attendance with each other when we do this work. And so we're activating each other as we do it. Okay, so still 11 attendees. Well, 10 because one of them's my computer. So that's better than I thought it would be. I didn't know what to expect today. Okay. So on that note, again, I've mentioned communication error. That's aggravating. Okay, that's better. When I was talking about, this moon and Gemini being communication, I think it says the beginning is like, it's really communicating with ourselves on a cellular level, all the way at the core, atomic, subatomic, and I mean, if I had $1 for every time I, took us into all this, I mean, this is already where we're living when we do these calls. We're already having those kinds of communication. So if we're already in those spaces, what is a new moon that's already geared to that going to be able to do to amplify what we're already used to doing? And I really think that we have a chance to clear a lot of stuff tonight with all of this. So, yeah. Okay, so just imagine, as we go into this, clearing out everything in the DNA, anything that's still playing out a distortion, anything that's carrying out or holding a lower frequency, anything that no longer serves you, any thought forms that are coming through that you still feel like you're stuck with, that you want to let go of. Again, all those, that's internal communication. I mean, this really is the amazing time to let those things go. So, and again, the actual moon, we're sitting in it, and it doesn't come direct until like 9:54. So that's going to be like 40 minutes from now, less than, somewhere in there. So we'll definitely be in meditation till 10. So just imagine, if you will, that any of the stuff that you always hope to get rid of and shift. Maybe this is the night it shifts. Yeah. So, okay, just take deep breaths and just deep dive in if you haven't already. I'm going to put it silent on my end too, so I don't. And you're going to take some of my nasal spray. Again, thank you, Babette. So, okay, here we go. Okay, everyone, I'm going to stop